shouldn't just be putting a shed there because a shed fits there. It's about how the whole thing incorporates and the movements within the yard. And that's what we're trying to highlight. Like, I think now is an opportunity for farmers maybe just to say, right, I'm going investing. I'm going to take a step back here. I'm going to get someone to look at this and look at myself and see how this new investment fits in with my own yard and how it'll fit into my own yard going forward. So we don't want what we do today being in the wrong place in 3, 4, whatever number of years at a time.
I'm joined this week by Chugus dairy specialist Pat Gowing to discuss farmyard infrastructure and why good planning and design are key to improve animal performance, ease in management and allow for future development. Chugus are running a series of events looking at good farmyard design and investment. Pat outlines what will be discussed across these events nationally.
There's about 14 or 15 events around the country. I suppose a lot of changes and things have happened over the last number of years and progress has been made on farms, but maybe in a lot of cases there's always a little bit of catch up around facilities. So there's probably scope there at the moment, or maybe people are looking at to invest in their yards, maybe to catch up on whatever they're shy on. And I suppose from our point of view, we just want to highlight the best practice in farmyard design. So the idea of the events is to use a farm. So we're going to a local farm in your own area as a backdrop. And an unusual maybe event from a Teagasc point of view, we stay in the yard and we walk you through the yard, showing the good and bad points of any yard or any future development on it. We're just trying to point out the key things to consider if you are looking to do something yourself on your own farm.
And is there specifics that you're going to be looking at on the day, Pat? Specific elements of farmyard design or infrastructure that you're going to be focusing in on?
There'll be 3 main areas, I suppose, James. So the one is the calving area and calf housing. I suppose part of the reason for doing that is we normally talk about calf housing in November or December. And it gives the farmer very little time to maybe adjust or amend, so as to go through the requirements of, space requirements of calves, falls, all that on the floor. And similarly with the calving shed, obviously having that right will be a major labour saving for any farm. We'll also then look at the parlour, key areas around the parlour, around the dairy washings, holding yards, and it's actually just looking more so the cow flow throughout the parlour exits and down through the drafting and foot battings, again just showing best practice there. And the last area we'll focus on is on the cubicle shed and slurry storage. So obviously there's good grants there at the moment, particularly on the slurry storage. 60% of 90,000 for most people, and depending if you're in partnership there may be more. So there's good scope there, and again it's just about, if you are investing, you mightn't build a whole lot. You might do the shed this year and build the tank this year and build the shed over in 2 or 3 years' time. It's about making sure it's put in the right place and it's future-proofed and designed. And they're also giving you an outline on what's available through the TAMs as well. So they're the main areas we hope to cover at these events.
What time are these events starting at, Pat? And I suppose where can our listeners maybe find where their local event is on?
So the majority of them are starting at 11. Obviously, just check your times locally. Most of them are running from mid-July on. Most of them running in the last week of July, and then some into August, and there's 1 or 2 in September. The Teagasc website, so just www.teagasc.ie. I'll give a full list of all the local events around for, and just, or if you can't get onto it, I'd say just ring your local dairy advisor and they'll point you into the right direction.
You mentioned there good farmyard design, and without stealing maybe all of the thunder from the events, but what are the key points to good farmyard design from your perspective?
I suppose, James, the first thing we have to do is maybe step back and the hardest yard you'll ever do is your own. We live in our own yards. Maybe we accept things, or it was always done that way, or your parents did it this way, or your parents built that shed and things like that. So I'd often find is your own yard is the worst. And a lot of people are actually far better designing someone else's yard because they don't have that emotional attachment to it, or it has been done this way for X amount of years. So I think what we need to do is what we're trying to do is, like, the investment costs in buildings has gone up a lot. So if we're going to invest, we want to make sure it's right. And I think then too is it shouldn't just be putting a shed there because a shed fits there. It's about how the whole thing incorporates and the movements within the yard. And that's what we're trying to highlight. Like I think now is an opportunity for farmers maybe just to say, right, I'm going investing. I'm going to take a step back here. I'm going to get someone to look at this and look at myself and see how this new investment fits in with my own yard and how it'll fit into my own yard going forward. So we don't want what we do today being in the wrong place in 3, 4, whatever number of years at time. And I suppose what we would look at then is it's the flows of the yard, I suppose, James, and how you move, and we'd have a set of rules we'd nearly like to try to abide by to get it right. And what we'd say is good design solves all problems. So, like if you can design your yard right, from a cow point of view, it minimizes dirty water, so that's it better from a water quality point of view. It also minimizes the potential for lameness, so it gets a lot of things right. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing it, on it. And I think the key one from us is it's the three movements, James. So there's three main movements in any dairy farm, which is the milk lorry, the machinery within the yard, and the cows coming, one from the shed, but mainly from the grazing. And what we're trying to do with them three main movements is have them working side by side, but not crossing over. So that's the first rule we abide by. Like, so that starts setting up, if you're doing a parlour, where's the parlour to go? That's basically what we want is someone can be bringing in the cows, the milk lorry can be sucking, and maybe someone doing silage or feeding out silage all at the one time, and no one interfering with anyone. And if you can get that right, you minimise dirty yards, so the tractors are not driving over or cows are crossing over. The milk lorry can work independent, which is important as well. Like, so that'd be one of our main rules we'd work with. The next one, I suppose, is, which is to me is also very important, is expansion lines, as I call it. So it's the what if. So most people say, I'm going to milk 100 cows, or I'm going to milk 60 cows, and they're ringing you in 3, 4, 5 years time, and another bit of land came up. So I think we have to allow for the what if. So what if this grows? What if an opportunity comes up? And particularly when it comes to parlours, like the size of a parlour normally lasts 30 to 40 years. So the size of the herd could be gone, or double the size or treble the size in the next 30 or 40 years. So we have to allow for all these things. So we call them expansion lines. So the system works together that we can expand the yard if needs be, but not compromising on the three movements, as I already said.
And you mentioned it there, it's kind of the fresh set of eyes type of thing. So if farmers are thinking about investing, you've outlined some of those key principles, but is it a matter of talking to your advisor, maybe getting your discussion group? It could be a discussion group meeting, it could be fellow farmers. It's about having a conversation and putting a bit of planning in place rather than there's a level site there and that's where the shed will fit, or there's a little bit of forward thinking required, Pat, is it?
Yeah, I think so. And sometimes, and I would see it myself, is that you're building a cubicle shed, but maybe the parlour is going to be done in 5 or 6 years' time. So actually, if you're building a cubicle shed, you should be designing your parlour around it now as well, to make sure that all works, because maybe the site of the existing parlour is not ideal and it will have to be moved. So now you're after putting the cubicle shed to the old parlour, where longer term it's going to be working off the new parlour. So it's just to make sure, as you say, with a discussion group, ideally, or a Teagasc advisor, to go out and have a look, placement on it. I do think, generally, with all the advisors have been trained to it, like, is that there's these set of rules, and you get more detail about the events that we try to abide by. It generally comes up with one or two good places for the what you want to do, because it's sort of, the three movements, the expansion lines. By doing all these things, tends to push the power to one side of the yard, and the whole thing starts building around that. And sometimes I think with farmers, to get 5, 6, 7 options, 5 options in their head is right. And it's a big decision. Like, you could be spending 300,000, 400,000, and everyone's telling you to put it in a different place. So we have to get back to working off the principles and these guidelines. There has to be a reason why you would put the parlour there or the cubicle shed, not just it's going there, as you say.
Mm. And the vast majority of people are actually working out of existing yards. And I think maybe sometimes people think, good farmyard design is easy when you go to a greenfield site, Pat. You may not tick all the boxes and you mightn't be fit to cover them all off, but is it fair to say, even working within existing yards, you will fit the new design in and capture a lot of what you said there with a bit of thinking.
I think, look, yeah, you can't ignore what's there. Costs a lot of money to put them there, so we can't just say, here, we're going up the road 100 yards and going to build a new job, because
Mm.
in an ideal world we probably should, but sure, money be money, and we have to stick with what we have. And like concrete that was put down 10 years ago is increasing in value as the price of concrete goes up, so we can't ignore what's there, and we have to work with it, of course, to keep the cost down. Yeah, I think you can. I'd say 90% of them you can get right. Like, look, levels can be an issue. Obviously, in some parts of the world, the levels can be hard, and you're always playing with them. But again, you're trying to compromise the least amount, I suppose. So to me, if you're putting that investment in, this is going to be a future proof. This is going to be right for the next 30, 40 years. You compromise the least amount. That's what you're trying to do. So, and again, it comes back to the rules and work through it. But generally, you can work with it. Realignment, and it's that fresh pair of eyes. And again, I don't think, if you are, look, there's any amount of places you can get advice on buildings, and there's no issue. Go to, if it's not Teagasc you want to go to and you want to go somewhere else, but don't just accept that the shed is going to go there. Make sure, even if you went just to the events, that to get these guideline rules that we have, and it'll be on the handout as you go away from it as well. Make sure the design is ticking as many of them as possible, because therefore it'll be right. Because we have to think about soil water. We can't be having cows traipsing across open yards and things like that. That day is gone. So all these things have to be considered when we're doing the design. So make sure whatever you come up with, it ticks as many of them design criteria that we have laid out for you at the events. Because if you get them right, generally speaking, it'll be future-proofed and right going forward as best we can do it.
You mentioned one of them there, and maybe to add another one to it in terms of that soil water, but also in terms of slurry storage. That's a big one that is obviously being discussed, and it's likely the Department of Agriculture are going to increase the weekly capacity required. So, what's the advice to farmers in this regard?
Yeah, so it likely, as you say, it's like to increase. Chugus, on behalf of the department, have done research there looking at the capacities requirement on it, and sure, in reality, the cows are probably producing more, so because they're producing more milk, so therefore they'll produce more slurry. So that's probably just common sense when you think about it. The actual figure we haven't been confirmed on, so we can't say it now, but it will increase. I think the first step there is you have to look at yourself. Like, if you're under ferocious pressure for slurry come the end of the close date, you don't have enough capacity yourself anyway as it is. So the cow hasn't changed, if you know what I mean. So the regulatory figure will change, but what your own farm is doing, it'll be the same cow you had this year. Only the department will use a different figure on it. If you're under pressure and you can't barely getting out, you don't have enough capacity in reality. And we have to start looking at this from not necessarily looking at it from it's looking actually from a grass growing point of view. So in the past, we could spread as much chemical nitrogen, I won't say as much as we want, but we had a higher tolerances for it. So if we put out the slurry and we didn't get the bang of the nitrogen in it, you could top it off there with a bit of urea or triazurea or whatever it was. That's gone. So now we have a value in the slurry that can grow grass in the absence of chemical nitrogen. And if we're putting that out at the wrong times or in bad weather or whatever it is, we're not capturing the grass growing potential of that nutrient in the slurry. So having the extra capacity to give you more freedom to put it out when it'll grow grass is very important. There's a massive grant on it there at the moment. So 60% on 90,000, which for most people would like 120 foot tank, maybe 60,000. You're talking about getting 60% of that back. It can be wrote off over tax as well. Like, so a lot of benefits there. So the net cost for it wouldn't actually be that much, but it could give yourself a massive amount of capacity. So I think regardless of the regulatory figure, you have to have a cold look at your own farm, talk to your advisor. Where are you in reality? Look at it yourself. If you're barely scraping out, in reality, you probably don't have enough. And if you want to maintain with the current cow numbers, you'll have to invest anyway.
Yeah, it's probably really all dairy farmers should sit down and have a look at their slurry and soil water storage capacity and see where they're at, because as you say, there is good grants available, and it's a matter of ensuring that future investments cover off and build in a bit of spare capacity, I suppose, as well, Pat, to allow in case there does come a little bit of additional ground available or cow numbers will increase slightly, that you don't have to go in the short term again.
Yeah, look, and I think sometimes I was probably on podcast with you before, James. I was telling you all to keep the cost down. Now I'm telling you all to build. So depends on the time of the year. I tell you different things, but in the end of the day, the slurry storage is a long term investment too. There's a lot of slurry tanks that were built 20, 30 years ago and they're still being used today. Like, so the lifespan of them is massive. Like, so it'll really future proof your farm going forward. But we have to keep growing the grass, and so we need the nutrient that's in the slurry to grow that grass, and that's it. So we need the capacity of the slurry to do it. And there's options there, like it doesn't have to be slag concrete ones. There's other options there, lower cost ones as well that you could explore. But the starting point is sit down with your Teagasc advisor or whoever does your irrigation plan or your nitrates plan. See where you are, have an honest chat with yourself, where you actually are yourself from a farming context, and then put on that extra capacity if required.
You mentioned it there earlier about building costs, and at the recent Chugus Muir Park Open Day, a big part of that was managing costs. So on one hand, you've said it here, we need to invest in infrastructure. On the other hand, we're saying that we need to control costs, all while building costs have increased. Are they good costs? Is there a way that they can be managed? The reality is building costs have probably put some farmers off in terms of investing. What's your advice around that?
It's gone very expensive. So if we look 2016, 2017, give or take, cubicle shed with a cubicle and slurry storage underneath, so concrete slab tank, we would be talking, €1,700 cow spec, give or take. Now, there's always a range in the figures we give because it depends on the design and the finish and so forth on, and how well you're at pricing. So that's just a rule of thumb figure. You're probably 3,300 to 3,500, so you're looking at doubling of costs for the same build. Obviously, we go to the higher side of that 3,500 if the capacity per cow increases, because we'll need more slurry storage per cow in the build. So yeah, that's they're big figures. Similarly with parlours, up to 3, 4, 5 years ago, we've been saying sort of 16,000 a unit, maybe for a medium spec parlour, 8 on the plant, 8 on the building work. We'll be working closer to 20 now, and all them figures will be ex-VAT before grant. So it does run into a lot of money very quick. They will add costs to your business, of course they will, because and what you're going to get there is you'll get a little bit of tax rebate through the depreciation and the interest, and they will add costs. I suppose from a cash flow point of view, structure it right. Put it, sheds are going to last 40 years. Don't pay for them in 5, pay for them over 15. Don't put pressure on the cash flow to try to get this thing paid fast. By all means, if you're having a couple of great years and you want to knock a bit of money off it, that's fine, but have the good years first before you go the other way around that. I think the other thing when we look at, and we've met with the banks and discussed it with the banks as well, while there has been a massive cost surge, particularly since 2021, the milk price in general on average over the last 5 years has kept up with the increase. So we are making more money per cow on average over the last 5 years than we did in the previous 5 years. So what seems to be happening is we're playing with bigger figures, but the differences are the same. So the returns are the same. It just feels wrong, if you know what I mean. So there is scope there, but we have to be very careful, James, and we've said it before, and we said it again, and we said it at Moore Park there the last day, 100 cows doesn't mean you can borrow 200,000. It's the profitability of that system. So for anyone from investment, if the basics aren't right, underperforming for whatever reason, you've done plenty of podcasts explaining where things go right and wrong. The issue is not the investment then, the issue is to get the farm back profitable, and if the farm is back profitable, will carry the investment costs. For most places, you're not looking at putting the full amount on, you're adding additional stuff on. So it's not that you have a 200 cow farm, you have to build a 200 cow build. It's usually a bit of additional, so that usually the system is there to carry it, assuming everyone else is right. But generally speaking, farms more profitable. There is obviously a massive range. If you look at the swing from 22 to 23 and even back to now, and we have to be able to handle that, structure it right over long term, and there should be no major issue for most farmers.
And probably a business appraisal for those more significant investments, Pat, is no harm in terms of taking a longer term look at what impact
Yeah,
it'll have on the run of the business.
yeah. Look, I was only out at a farm this morning there now, and looking at a parlour, and sure, one with the other probably cost 400 or 440,000. Like, so he says it's easy for you to say it. You don't have to pay for it, which is a fair point. So it always comes back to the business plan. It's like going on YouTube or something and looking at jokes you can't afford. If the farm can't afford it, don't worry about it. But that doesn't mean you can't get the farm to a position that you can afford it, and work through it. And maybe you'll have to, instead of doing the whole job in one go, maybe you have to take it in bites until you get the thing back and around. So the business planner will tell you that. And again, your local dairy advisor will be able to help you with that.
Yeah. One final one is, and it would have been said over the last couple of years, a concern from farmers, I should say, investing in farm facilities and a certain amount of uncertainty in terms of maybe the stocking capacity that's going to be allowed for their farms going forward, with regards to irrigation and nitrates, and standing back and not investing in those farms, is that the right thing to do, Pat?
I'd say for most people, no. Again, because the profit, if we're working on averages, and there's people the right side and the wrong side of the averages, but the profitability is in the business and it can take it. So the cows generally have been profitable, so they can take the investment, proper investment, like, structured and long term investment. And again, it's not all negative, as I said. Like, so if you can retain your grass growth because having the extra capacity to actually, while there's the cost of investment, utilising your slurry better to grow grass will reduce costs in other places. If you can keep your grass growing figure up, which up to this year has been a struggle over the last 2 years. I think, look, you have to be compliant. So whatever the figure is the department come out with on the day, you have to be compliant. And you have two options then. Or like, one is, right, I'm on shore irrigation, you can destock till they see what happens, to the capacity of slurry that you have. That's a choice, or you can invest and see what happens the other side. Like, so either way you're wrong. But I think, again, for most people, if it's particularly in that capacity area in the slurry storage, if we need to improve water quality, which we do, you need to get better use of the slurry to grow the grass. I don't see it being, putting 50 or 60,000 into an average 100 cow farm and getting 35, 40,000 back off it. I don't see that being the one that's going to trip them up, even if the cow numbers reduce a bit. So I think that we have to, again, look at this like we're not. You probably wouldn't go out and, maybe if you're worried about it, go off and build a 200 cow shed, but maybe you had that extra bit of capacity will be there, even if you reduce the cow numbers by a small bit as well. Like, so it is a decision, but you have to be compliant. Like, that's the law of the land, and that's it. So either you reduce the cow numbers or you build the capacity. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's a concern that can't be dismissed, but I think, as you said, the vast majority of farms would benefit from additional slurry storage, maybe more capacity in terms of calf housing or extra units or drafting or whatever it may be within the yard.
I think and it's often forgot too, like, and again, back to the business planners who say, James, like, it has to be affordable. We don't want to put farms under pressure, and that's the starting point. So I would say, look at where there's Farmyard design, which the events are about, but also a couple that, if you are going ahead to get the Farmyard business plan done, or farm business plan, I should say, done. I think then, like, I'd often ask with the groups, is like, so if you're out of a group or something, you'd say, if you had a 100-foot tank in the 15th of December, would you have slurry in it? So my point there is, if you had a new 100-foot tank in it, and would you have slurry in it, or would it be empty? And they all said would have slurry in it. And I says, but in reality, you don't have enough capacity, so you may go build it anyway. So slurry will get into it some way, and you'll have it, and you're not in a panic. We also look at, I think, from cost point of view, like a lot of moving out with heavy gear earlier on in the year, maybe poach or sort of damaging ground, compacting it, maybe having to reseed more often. Like there's other benefits there we probably haven't quantified. We were just all looking at the grass growing potential, and I think having that sort of that extra bit of capacity, whether it be through the slurry storage or it's after from the calf shed point of view or the calving shed, there's massive gains from a labour point of view at the time when you're busiest if you have that little bit of extra capacity on any of them things. So to me, when there's no issue with calving if there's room for the cows calving, and there's no, and like if there's a space for the calf, like everyone is first 20 or 30 calves the calf, we do all think it's a doddle, like sure, they're in a big calf shed and they're running around, there's no hope, and eventually then the thing keeps rolling, and then next thing, where's another calf comes and where's it going to go? So if you have that capacity, it reduces the labour demand, obviously it's better for the calf. Similarly with the calving shed, having that you can put up a cow, maybe it's a bit tender or something a day or two beforehand, and maybe put her back in a day or two after if she requires. That reduces the labour demand on the farm. And similarly with slurry, very busy, you have to go because the tanks are full, towards having that bit of extra capacity that you can time it maybe from a work point of view, but also from a weather point of view.
It's probably worth noting as well, 2025, talking to farmers recently at the Moore Park Open Day, it's been an exceptionally good year, and looks like the second half, as long as we don't have any strange weather events, it's going to continue in that vein and going to be a very profitable year. So these things you're speaking about are they're better investments and they're longer term investments, fair enough, but maybe making that snap decision in November that you're going to do something that's maybe not going to give the same return, let it be in labour efficiency or capacity, as you say, from a nutrient storage point of view. So really, farmers need to be thinking about these things now. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. So everything costs money now, as we've already said. If you invest in your yard or anything, what's the payback? That's what we have to look at. So where's the return? And sometimes the return is not just on money. It can be, it's an easier yard to work in. It's better for the labourers on the yard, better for myself. So if you're investing money, where am I getting it back? And a few of them things we were saying there, they will have a return for you. Not necessarily always straight away the financial, but where the yard runs and works, and over time it'll build up. I think we have to really, these are all planning jobs, so for most people that you're going to invest in, and if you go through the TAM system to get the grants, it's a planning job as it is at the moment. So what we're talking about today probably won't be built next year, between you get the planning permission over the line and maybe your grant application if you're going there, and then maybe you have to talk to the bank. So these are longer term investments that we're talking about and need to be planned. So the reason we wanted to come out relatively early in the year was we'd actually see most of these things maybe built next year if they are to go ahead, because we have to go through all the steps we have to go through. So the longer we leave it, the longer it will be before we have it if you need it, and then it's maybe another year gone, if you know what I mean. Generally speaking, plan permission, if you get it, last 5 years, so it gives you options to, you don't have to take it all in one go and jump into it.
Very good, Pat. Thanks a million. And look, we'd encourage our farmer listeners to check out on the Chugus website where your most local Farmyard design event is, and that's just really a flavour in terms of what's going to be discussed on the day. As you said, Pat, it's going to be in a commercial dairy working farmyard, so it'll be very practical and well worth getting to. So that's it this week for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast. Thanks to Pat Gowing for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, go to the Chugus website at chugus.ie. I'm James Dunne, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.